Let's talk about the case of two teenagers. Let's welcome you to Extra Special here on Breakfast Extra, where we uncover stories that shock, challenge, and also ultimately inspire change. Today, we're shedding light on a very dark reality faced by many unsuspecting young Nigerians, the harrowing experience of human trafficking. Yes, recently, two Nigerian teenagers found themselves trafficked to Ghana, only to be forced into a world of cybercrime by ruthless gangs. This story isn't just about them, it's about a growing network of exploitation that preys on young, vulnerable individuals across West Africa, offering false promises and delivering them into a nightmare, and nightmare is the word. It took a coordinated effort and cross-border collaboration between Ghanaian law enforcement and also our News Central correspondent here, Marshal Ononye. Now, this case highlights the intricate ways of traffickers, how they operate, luring their victims with dreams of opportunity, only to trap them in lives of fear and coercion. Let's see if we have Marshall here with us. Marshall, good morning. I'm hoping that you've joined us already. There you are, Marshall.
Good morning, Mazzino.
Grand.
Good morning.
So, Marshall, very good work so far, what you've done in helping these two individuals to regain their freedom. But first, can you walk us through how they initially got trapped in this melee?
Okay, thank you. Mazzino, you said two, but what we have right now is 5. That's the number we have, 5 people that have been rescued and not 2. And asking about how they got into all of this, they were invited by some guy who came under the guise of recruiting some people for a movie shoot, for a job. And what was supposed to be a job turned out later to them to be a movie shoot. And they were invited to a certain location in Lagos State, and upon arriving at that location, they were told that the venue had changed and they were going to move somewhere towards the border. And on arriving at the border, they were told that the first batch of people who were involved in that job had moved to Ghana, and they were lured to go to Ghana for that job. And then on arrival, they, met the surprise of their lives. They were blindfolded and then taken to, they arrived Ghana in the wee hour of that day, and then they were taken to the place where they were held. The 2 guys who were tracking were held for over a month, and then the other guys who were rescued, we met someone who had been there for since January of 2024, and then another person since May of 2024, and then one more person had only just joined a week before we intercepted the entire operation.
And when they keep saying promises of job opportunities of employment, were they specific as to what type of job they thought they were coming to Ghana to do?
Well, I'm not sure you heard me from the beginning. I did say that they were told to come shoot a movie. They were going to be shooting a movie, and what was supposed to be a movie turned out to be them being held captive.
And the suspects, the ones who have been holding them captive, we understand that there was a chairman, the other men as well, who were part of a fraudulent syndicate of running 419 schemes, and as we call in our local parlance, yao yao. What's the latest with them? Have they been apprehended? What's the latest with the suspects?
Well, currently we have one suspect in custody who's been who's already been arraigned in court, and who was arraigned yesterday. We started the trip to the court on Thursday. The charges were admitted in court, and then the court had to write to a higher court to ask for allocation for which of the courts would be assigned the case to hear. And then on yesterday, we got the case. We heard the case was assigned to the Circuit Court 1 at the Adenta Court Complex, Frafraha, in Accra, Ghana. And the presiding judge was Her Honor Justice Angela. Justice Angela was the one who sat on that hearing. And yesterday, it was quite an accelerated one. the charges were read in court, and then the person who was held was said to be, was requested to be remanded in police custody until further hearing, and eventually the case was adjourned to Tuesday for other hearing. Now, the judge also issued 2 bench warrants for 2 other people who are involved in this particular case.
Now, Marshall, this is not the first of this kind of case that we've seen. In fact, there was one here in Nigeria, in Delta State, Warri, where people were trafficked from across Nigeria to Warri. We're seeing an increase in the prevalence of these kinds of cases. However, I would like to compare what the response has been like from the police, from the authorities, whether here in Ghana whether here in Nigeria versus Ghana. What was the response like in Ghana? And if you were to compare that to the Nigerian response from what we've seen in other cases, what would it be? What would the result be?
Well, Mazino, here in Ghana, the police have been very, 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 very responsive. From day one, when we arrived, we went to them with all the facts that we had. We also showed them the data that we had, and they immediately swung into action. They asked if we had done our own surveillance, because we had the first-hand data, and it was all in the affirmative, and they were sure that we had the right information, and so they didn't spare anything in putting manpower that they needed to be deployed to that location. From the Accra Regional Police Headquarters to where the intelligence team who took over the operation, where it took us an hour, 30 minutes to get to Sasabi, the location where these guys were being held. It's on the outskirts of Accra, and it's in a developing area where settlement, you've got sparse settlement, but they swung into action. They didn't complain that it was out of their a distance away. They didn't complain that we were Nigerians coming for the first time, meeting us for the first time. They didn't ask for any kind of money or mobilization or logistics, And when we got there, the raid took place. We were able to gain access to the compound and eventually found those boys and rescued them. And when we got back to town, they raised documents to take these guys to the hospital. And when they got to the hospital, the police, showed up the bills. They took over the bills for treating these guys. One person had a dislocation in his arm, and the other person had wounds, scars. 2 people had scars on their back. The police sorted all of that out.
Marshall, your voice, I'm sure, is a sign of fatigue, and I must say, well done. So far, we know there was one that joined since January, one who joined 2 weeks prior, and also Daniel and Zeal, the young men who pretty much were the catalysts that started this whole investigation. I have to ask, for those children, the young boys that you met there, those teenagers, have they been able to make connections with their family? And what was their own story as well, especially coming from the angle of their parents?
Also, both Zeal, Daniel, and the rest of the guys had their phones seized. Now, you would imagine that when these guys were brought in, they had their phones seized by their captors and kept away somewhere in the building. So when the place was raided, their phones were discovered in one of the rooms where the captor was staying. And so everything at that point in time was considered exhibit and couldn't have been released to these persons. So it was a little difficult for the others, aside from Zeal and Daniel. It was a bit difficult getting across to their parents because they had their numbers in their phones. But yes, we've been able to get across to eventually some relatives of theirs, and we're hoping to be back today with them at New Central. And we do know that the parents and relatives are waiting to have them reunited with them.
Well, Marshall, I must say thank you. We appreciate you for just taking out the time this morning and joining us. And also, I think you should get some, what's the word for that thing? Some strepsils for your voice. And we hope you get a plenty of rest.
Or come
and
back home
well
for
done.
tender loving care. Just come back home.
Yeah, we'll miss you. Also, Rain and Dew misses you as well. I'm sorry.
Thank you very much, Marshall. Thank you.